All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Monday, July 5th, 2021. We continue to track Tropical Storm Elsa, now pretty much landfalling in Cuba as we speak at this hour here down by South Florida and all that. Maximum sustained wind 65 miles an hour today. And again, the storm pretty much moving over the central Cuban coastline right now. So no major changes from the last 24 hours since we last talked. I wanted to have another video last night, but we were celebrating the whole fourth, and I didn't think you wanted a half drunken rambling of weather, so I did spare you guys that. So you know, I'm here for you, really. Anyway, so we have the latest from National Hurricane Center as of 11 a.m. this morning, guys. A lot of tropical storm watches and warnings in effect. Of course, central Cuba under tropical storm warning as a tropical storm is making landfall. We also tropical storm warnings of the dry Tortugas and the Florida Keys to about Cedar Key, and then most of the west coast of Florida, pretty much from the southern tip of the state of the peninsula all the way up to the Big Bend region, which is looks like here um, to the Suwannee River basically is under a tropical storm warning via the NHC, and then a tropical storm watch goes from the Suwannee River to about Indian Pass, which is over here to the other side of the Big Bend, and then you also have tropical storm watches for the northern Florida Keys, and you'll notice right now no tropical storm watches for the East Coast, Miami and all that, not expecting sustained tropical storm force winds, so I don't think the East Coast of Florida is going to get a tropical storm watch or warning at this point. If they were, then they definitely would have by now. So that's kind of the big update as far as your watches and warnings go, guys. We're going to quickly run through the last 24 hours, and we're going to get to impacts. Mostly, we're kind of shifting the forecast from theory and whatnot to, okay, we know what she's going to do. This cone here is pretty well set. There's a few subtle things left to figure out, but largely this is the cone you're going to see and the possible tracks you're going to see. There's no lot of surprises left for her. So, Rickley, over the last 24 hours, she did wind up tracking south of Haiti, north of Jamaica, and then south of Cuba. It was actually, if you had to draw a nearly perfect track for her to thread this needle, she pretty much did it. And we talked about in the video, okay, well, look, if she gets south of Cuba and gets in that warm water and she got that great outflow aloft, maybe she'll strengthen. Well, as it turns out, she has not strengthened. This is the satellite presentation of the storm, and you got a pretty sheared tropical cyclone in your hands. The center of the storm is actually, again, right about here. It's right about making landfall. Deep, nice thunderstorm activity, beautiful outflow aloft on this side, and then this side is just a hot mess. And this has been the story of Elsa. It is these big convective pulses. She wraps around, and then the wind shear knocks the top of the storm off, and then they get blown off to the west or to the south or whatever, and then the storm has to try again anew. This was illustrated really well by Brian McNulty. He's got a radar. He's a researcher down in Miami, and he has a radar loop of in Cuba, and you'll see it right here. So nice center, good stuff, and then boom, right there, it just gets blown right off. The center just gets blown right off and off to the east, and then she's back to being a sheared mess. So this has been the story of Elsa, and honestly, it does not look like it's going to change. The Hurricane Center does not really forecast any intensification, because you may look at this when you're a savvy viewer and you go, well, okay, she comes over Cuba. That's not a very long trek, and you told me the other day, Western Cuba, nice and flat and narrow. Okay, well, it looks like she's going to do that. And you got all this time over water. I mean, you've got from pretty much tonight until early Wednesday morning offshore. I mean, why wouldn't that, have some time to strengthen? And that's because wind shear is forecast to stay fairly high. This is the GFS 200 millibar wind. This is upper level winds. We are talking a pretty nice trough here over the eastern coastline, or the East Coast, and this is what is helping to pull her up and around and over Florida and off and out to sea. But right now, she's still in the lightest wind shear she's going to have, which is still some. There's still some westerly wind shear over the storm, but she's also got some outflow on the other side, which is good. So she's not in a perfect spot like we thought she might be. But you look at the next couple days or so, you push her through, and you can see here the wind shear only picks up. This trough continues to dig down, and all of this southwest wind aloft is going to continue to push those cloud tops off and just shear it and mess with it. So it looks like as she approaches, she's going to keep this same look where the center is here, and you have a lot of heavy weather on the east side, and then on the west side, you've kind of got a lot of nothing. Now, the bad news for Florida is you are on the east side of the storm, so you're going to get a lot of heavy weather and rain bands and all that crap. So you're not going to escape it, but it is going to prevent her from, say, exiting the Cuba coast, hitting the Straits of Florida, and blowing back up into a significant hurricane. That's just probably not going to happen at this point. So Hurricane Center does hold a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Basically, they weaken her a little bit after Cuba and then bring her back up to 65 before landfall. Could she, in theory, hit hurricane status again? It is possible. potential, like your ships model, which has been a little high on the storm since it was, been going on, does forecast the potential for that. Is the difference in a 65-mile-an-hour tropical storm and a 75-mile-an-hour hurricane crazy? No, because she's not going to be able to significantly change her structure. She's not going to be able to do eyewall replacements and grow that wind field and really drastically change how the storm actually looks and feels. It's going to pretty much be the same. It just, hey, there might be a small sliver of the storm that's producing hurricane force winds instead of tropical storm force winds. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see a 65, 75-mile-an-hour wind gust, along the west coast of Florida somewhere, but she's not really going to have enough time and good enough conditions to do so. If this was a perfect anticyclone and she had no wind shear aloft, I mean, it'd be a little more concerning, but I don't think she's going to have an environment to do so. So let's go ahead and get to your impacts, guys. Let's go ahead and switch over and talk about what this actually looks like for Florida. And I would like to show you the NAM simulated radar, but they're showing the storm coming in pretty far south. But we can still roughly time it out. You have the storm moving up through Cuba this afternoon. We can see here, even by this afternoon on Monday, strong thunderstorms erupting over southern Florida with that onshore flow and the first outer rain bands of Elsa moving on. And then you can see here by the evening hours tonight, you have the storm by the morning really into the Florida Keys in southern Florida, getting some of the worst weather of it, and then it moves up. Now on this by Tuesday afternoon, this has, the outer bands moving into northern Florida and southern Georgia, and then it has the core of the worst weather moving ashore somewhere south of Tampa. What's likely going to happen is she'll actually be more over here. So the west coast will be getting grazed by some of the worst weather with the rain bands, moving in out ahead of it. But it probably won't landfall this far south. So this is a rough timing estimator, but it's not good for the exact conditions. But you can see how this will kind of shape up. It'll move ashore. You'll have these like strong feeder bands, like this, and you'll kind of have these severe weather tails that'll line up. But you can see how pretty much all the wet weather stays over Florida, and the other side of the storm really isn't all that impressive. And that will be the story as far as the structure of Elsa. And like, say like this image right here, how you have the core of the storm over here, but you'll have this nasty band at some point, that'll be the worst of her weather once she's ashore. So that's kind of how it looks in the broad term. I'll go ahead and show you the GFS wind gust forecast. The GFS holds the storm closer to shore. She leaves leaves Cuba, and kind of hugs the coast and kind of has this more easterly solution like this. And this is a bit to the right of what the Hurricane Center is currently forecasting. And it shows you one potential outcome for wind gusts. Now, this is the maximum wind gust at any point between now and Thursday or late Wednesday night on this model. So you can see here the southeast coast staying below her tropical storm wind gusts at any point. Northern Florida, Northeast Florida, seeing wind gust about 35 to 45 miles an hour would be kind of your upper echelon there. Central Florida, about 35 to 45. And then your west coast, right where the weather is, the heaviest weather is, in the 40s and 50s, and near the coast there, you can see wind gusts over 60 miles an hour. That's all very possible with this track. Now I'll show you the Euro because this shows another potential outcome. And the NHC forecast actually a little bit closer to the Euro at this point, where the worst of the weather, the winds actually mostly stay offshore of western Florida. And you can see the stark difference along the west coast where the storm's a bit further away. It's a bit further offshore, where your winds at this point are only around 35, 45 miles an hour versus, the 50s and 60s like we see on the GFS. So you can see that little difference in the track can actually be significant. And this actually brings a little bit stronger storm into the Big Bend region in Appalachia Bay and whatnot. And this is showing wind gusts, 60, 70 miles an hour right around there at landfall, and then those 30 to 40 mile an hour wind gusts for northern Florida, north central Florida, and then strong winds even getting into Georgia by early on late Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So that is still one of the few things we have to hammer out. Again, the Hurricane Center's forecast you can see here is a little closer to the Euro. It kind of rides the line between the GFS model is kind of like there, and the European model is kind of like there. So that those subtle shifts within the cone could still make a difference as far as your wind impacts. But right now, I would kind of blend these models. I would just say, this is what you should expect on the west coast of Florida right here, and this is what you should expect if you live up here. And then be surprised if it's a little bit further away and you get lucky. That's just how these things are. Small track differences wind up making a big deal. Someone's going to get what they thought they weren't going to get, and someone's not going to get what they thought they were going to get. So just kind of prepare for what you see on these maps on the high end, and then hope you get lucky is how I always sell it to people. Rain forecasts are probably going to be pretty high. This is the WPC's outlook through early Thursday or late Wednesday, early Thursday again. You can see about 1 to 2 inches of rain for the southeast coast, where you'll have more of an onshore flow, but you'll miss some of the heavier weather. And then the more heavy rain along again the west coast and northern Florida, where she'll be, to the right of her, where all that moisture is. These aren't going to change a whole lot. This is a solid 2 to 4 inch forecast with the coastline closer to 4 to 6, kind of around the Tampa area, where probably the heaviest rain will be around the Tampa Clearwater region, maybe down to even Fort Myers. And that's going to cause some localized flash flooding. The WPC does hold a slight risk of flash flooding, which is about 10% chance to exceed flash flood guidance in an area. So that's fairly significant. This is a decently wet period we've been in for a while, so definitely expect that to be an issue. But flooding rain will likely be the biggest impact, along with some scattered power outages and whatnot. The winds we're going to see really aren't going to be strong enough for any serious impacts, but rainfall will definitely be a concern. And with rainfall comes water and surge expected now from the NHC to be about 2 to 4 feet in the high end along again the west coast. This is a very storm surge prone area of the coastline, so these 2 to 4 foot numbers, I would say even locally could be a bit higher. Some of these bays like Tampa Bay and whatnot could be even a little bit higher than this. So keep a very close eye on the storm surge, and please, if you're near the water, consider getting to higher ground. Storm surge is one of the things you don't want to play with and can be deadly even in a tropical storm, because that water can come in fast, and 4 to 5 foot of water in a very short period of time can lead to some serious issues. So please keep on with your local forecast for your local area storm surge potential. These maps are broad brush, are not meant to be, gospel for what you should do, but your local forecast will have a much better idea of what exactly to expect. And if you're in an evacuation zone, still a good idea to maybe get away from the beach for this thing as it comes through. And the Storm Prediction Center does show the potential for severe weather on Tuesday and Wednesday as this thing does move through. Marginal risk is set, which is low end mostly for tornadoes. One of the issues you will have is tornado potential on the right side of the storm, where the onshore rain bands come over and then they kind of get a little rotation and they kind of can produce these short-lived tornadoes. Tropical tornadoes typically aren't long-lived or particularly intense, but they strike very fast, and they can cause much higher wind speeds and damages than you would expect with a mid-grade tropical storm. So have at least two ways to get alerts and be careful. Just kind of pay attention to your surroundings as the storm is coming through, because these can strike with a little warning. They are very, very hard to detect, even with good radar. And the best people in the world watching radars, they can almost strike within a cut of the radars, 4 or 5 minute scan before we even see them. So please be careful and keep an eye out for that. And that's what I got for today, guys. That is the latest. That mostly covers Florida impacts tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll try to see about getting into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and see how that's going to look for them. Right now, the Hurricane Center just forecasted to be a depression, so maybe won't be too bad, but they'll get a good bit of rain for sure. And some tropical storm watches may be needed if she, maybe winds up going a little bit further south and stays just offshore. Then you might have a problem with tropical storm watches down the road for some of the stronger winds offshore. But expect high surf, rip currents, and heavy rain as the main impacts for Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina right now, and could be a little bit higher than that from there. So that's what I got for you guys today. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.